Welcome. I'm Ken Schmidt, Managing Partner with Techstone. We'll be showing you an exciting new solution for the FinTech market. At Techstone, we've been working with financial institutions since 2005 when we first started working with Hibernia Bank. Hibernia was a regional bank out of New Orleans where we helped them with their online banking solutions. And since then, we've grown a lot. We now have credit unions and regional bank clients from coast to coast. And we help these folks with developing data management solutions that help enable their digital transformations. We help enhance their member experience projects, and we help them integrate their core banking with multiple source systems like CRM or LOS. In this webinar, we're going to also have some other executives from Techstone that are going to be speaking. We're going to have Naresh, who's our Executive Director of Strategy. We're going to have Darren, who's our Sales Director. And now we're going to introduce Venkat, who's our CTO. He's going to show you a special solution called 360 Connect that's our accelerator for the FinTech market.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I am Venkat Malavarapu, CTO and Director Integration Practice at Techstone. I'm excited to walk you through how Techstone's FinTech accelerator can help banks modernize faster, reduce complexity, and deliver better experiences in today's digital world. And first of all, let's look at what's the necessity to digitize for the banks, right? So 87% of the customers are using digital banks. So to meeting this demand is no longer optional. It's essential to address the evolving customer expectations. And also added to that, in terms of market reach, non-digital banks face significant limitations in accessing global audience. Additionally, high operational costs remain a concern. Legacy systems are not only expensive to maintain, but also require specialized expertise, increasing dependence on outdated technologies. Of course, the compliance, which is really critical for the banks, right? Non-digital systems often lack modern security protocols, leaving banks more exposed to breaches, cyber attacks, and fraud. As regulatory requirements grow increasingly complex and dynamic, banks without digital capabilities may struggle to remain compliant, risking delays, inefficiencies, and potential penalties. And furthermore, to add to this, absence of real-time fraud detection in legacy systems limits banks' ability to proactively identify and prevent suspicious activity. And this keeps the banks and also customers at high risk. And also, to add it to that, like all the customers, they definitely need 24/7 digital access, right? And that's more important. And non-digital banks, they cannot provide this 24/7 access. And also, they face significant limitations when it comes to personalization and insights, because lack of modern tools and without the ability of efficiently gathering and analyzing the customer data, they cannot deliver the products to the customers to maximize their bucks, right? So these are all the factors that the banks, non-digital banks face, and they need to digitize to keep themselves in the market. So these are all the big challenges. And with this, this is a journey to go from non-digital to digital, how it looks like, and how much time it takes, and what are all the challenges to go digital. Let's look at that. So challenges. So as we talked in the previous screen, like most of the core banking systems are in legacy systems, right? They are like maybe in AS4000 or ES9000s or AS400, those kind of systems. Those old systems, they don't have any modern capabilities of APIs, and to integrate with the digital channels, there are only a couple of options the way you can integrate them with the digital channels. One, either you may have to develop APIs on top of legacy systems. Two, you have to migrate it to the modern applications. The first option is like when you develop APIs, of course you can digitize with them with the digital channels, but Still, they lack in all the other compliance things and all the other features that the modern applications offer, right? So the first option is not a better option. So it's always better to go with the modern applications that have all these capabilities and features. Having said that, it's not an easy journey. It's a complicated journey, right? Because you have a lot of functionalities developed in the old legacy systems. You need to understand those, document those, and then you need to migrate them to the newer applications. So it's just definitely a journey, right? So it takes time to market. It's take a lot of time, and it's also expensive because you need to document all these and then create the. It's not just lift and shift. You need to understand the data models and the functionality, how it works in the legacy systems, and you need to migrate to the modern applications. It's very expensive and time to market is very high. And not only that, and sometimes when you do these migrations, the bigger challenge is the response time. Typically in banking sector, when you do all these integrations, what we do is all these times, whenever the customers request any of the information, the calls go all the way to the backend applications and retrieve the data. That's not necessary in most of the cases, and which will add to the latency and degradation in the performance. So that's one of the bigger challenge that most of the integration they won't pay attention to when they migrate from non-digital to digital. So these are the basic challenges that most of the migrations take place. And then how do we address this? How can we mitigate this? How can we go to market like sooner, quicker? I want to go to market quicker, roll out my products quicker, right? And also I want to spend less money. It should be less cost. And how can I get my response time is quicker and my customer experience is enhanced? And all these questions, the answers is like, yeah, you can do it if you have an accelerator, right? That's where our TechStone accelerator comes into picture. And we offer two types of accelerators. One is a technology accelerator, which is 360 Connect. The other one is FinTech partnerships. We'll be talking about this more in the coming few minutes. So what is an accelerator? Accelerator is kind of a pre-built components, and it is modular to use, and probably it's like a plug and play. Like some of the activities, some of the journey will be already implemented in these accelerators. So you can just plug it in and then rest of the work will be implemented, right? So maybe it reduces the time to market and also reduces the cost. Let's see how it looks like. But before we get there, how a typical digital transformation looks like in an architecture framework, right? Let's look at that. So this is the architecture diagram for any digital transformation for the banks. This is kind of a busy screen. You see at the bottom of the screen, you see all the core banking platforms and also all the surround platforms, right? So these are all the platforms that you have the functionality built in. And then you see on the top your customers. That's where they're interacting with your banks, and that's the digital channels, right? And in the middle, you see the layer, that's the integration layer. To communicate between the digital channels and the backend core systems and the surround applications, you definitely need to have an integration layer where you can communicate with them. That integration layer comes up with all the features that you see in the screen, all the schedule. You can schedule the processes, event-driven, any of those frameworks will be built in. You don't have to invent all that, right? And you see those layers like API gateway that comes up with the integration layer, and also the and the critical part here is when you see that integration, canonical, data model, and transformations, right? And that's the critical part of it in the digital transformation. You remember we talked about in the previous screen migrating from legacy systems to the modern applications. How can you migrate that? You need to understand that the typical part of it, the core of this migration is the data model. What are all the functionalities you implemented in legacy systems? You want to exactly implement the functionality in the modern applications, right? So how can you make it like decouple and then maybe like application agnostic? So now you built all this in legacy systems, and tomorrow you'll be building another application, and day after you may be migrating to another application. How can I decouple it? How can I create a data model that is agnostic to any of the backend application implementation, right? That's what the data model is. So that's where your majority of the time, all these banks or any enterprises, they spend time on. They spend marathon sessions with the business teams, application teams, and digital teams. They'll be spending times with coming up with these data models. And once this data model is built, this is the one that is bridging between your digital channels and the backend applications, right? So that's the core of the digital transformation. So you have the data models ready. Awesome. Now, how can we communicate with the digital channels? You need to have the APIs on top of it that can communicate with these data models. Pretty good. Okay, you got the APIs. Then what? Say, for example, let's take core banking platform, right? Say you have core banking platform. It has got the functionalities like members, creating an accounts, and account transfers, last 10 transactions, those kind of things. These are all not the APIs. These are all the journeys. So what we just talked about is we created a data model and creating the APIs on top of it. Those are just the building blocks. And these user journeys, like creating a member, creating an asset. So asset is like a checking account. Say if you say you create a checking account, it's a journey, right? Because creating a checking account involves creating an asset, and asset has got all the features like what is the interest rate, what is the minimum balance, what is the annual fee, and a lot of other features. So this is a journey that any bank should go through when you create an account. So that journey needs to be defined. That journey needs to be coded on top of these APIs. So then you can integrate with the digital channels, right? That's the whole journey for digital transformation. So this is a lot of process, a lot of development need to be done, right? And this is only part of it. Once you develop the data models, APIs, journeys, and you can integrate with the digital channels. And the other piece is the gap you left here is integrating with the back-end system, the core banking system, for example, like we said, right? In this example, the data model needs to talk to the back-end core banking so that you can provide the information to your consumers and also create accounts, balance checking and account transfer, and also last 10 transactions, whatever. You need to communicate with the core banking platform, right? So you need to build communication between the canonical layer to the core banking. So that's where you need to build handler processes to communicate with them. So that's another piece of communication you need to develop. So you have bigger picture, you have a lot of things to develop, like the APIs to communicate to the core banking, data models, APIs, user journeys, and integrating with the digital channels, integrating with the core banking. We talked a lot. So this journey, every digitalization has to go through. But how can we go faster? I don't want to do all these things, right? I want to make it faster. How can we do it? So that's when you can look into the features of our 360 Connect. So this comes with the data models and the APIs. Remember we talked about the data models that can easily bridge the gap between the digital channels and the core banking. That's the data model we are talking about. We already have these data models built for you. And we already have the APIs built on these data models. So you got the building blocks there. Data models on top of the APIs, that are the building blocks. This itself will take 50 to 60% of the work done for your digital transformation. That's a major breakthrough. And then on top of it, you got the pre-built journeys. Wow, you got the journeys as well. End-to-end workflows for the customers and financial institute employees. This is really important, not only for customers, even for the financial institute employees. They need to do all these user journeys, right? So this is all built into this accelerator. So it can orchestrate through across the system. Say, for example, what does it mean, right? So say, for example, in a credit union, a customer comes and applies for a credit loan. And so when he applies for a loan, some of the banks may say the customer has to be a member in the credit union before he applies for a loan. And some other credit unions might say the customer doesn't need to be a member to apply for a loan. So it's kind of a different rules, right? So even though you have all the business use cases defined, user journeys defined, you still have an orchestration and rules defined. So based on that, you can configure all those rules and orchestrate these across the systems, from core banking to loan application, core banking to credit card application, and all those. So those orchestrations are also built in this user journeys and in this accelerator. That's a great achievement as well. That also reduces a lot of development activities. And with that, okay, we got all these data models, APIs, and pre-built journeys. And how can we make it more easier, right? And when it comes to, in the previous game, we have seen that a lot of core banking application and also surround applications. As an internal financial institute employee, the onus is on them to get the information. For example, for any customer information, say for example you have CRM system Salesforce, the employee will be logging into Salesforce application to get the customer data. For example, they need to get the credit information, they need to log into another application, credit card application, and then they go into maybe PSU. You enter into PSU and log into that and get the credit card information. Core banking, if you want to get any member details, you may want to log into like Pfizer, say for example, you log into the Pfizer and to get the member information. So the bank employees need to learn a lot of other systems and applications to log in, understand their different modules to gather the information. That's again inefficient, right? The employees will be spending a lot of time in learning those applications rather than helping the customers. So we want to have a unified user interface where the employees can log into just one or two interfaces, where as an accelerator, with the help of APIs, we can orchestrate, we can aggregate the data and functionality into these interfaces. For example, in one interface, you can see member information on the left, and maybe you can see the credit card information and also loan information in the same UI. So how beautiful is that, right? The employees can easily go one interface and then get all the information in one place. Less applications to learn. They don't have to spend a lot of time in learning other applications, and they can help the customers to max their benefits, right? That's the advantage of the unified user interface. And that's one benefit of this 360 account. We work with the user interface team and implement the unified user interface with the help of the APIs. And last but not the least, caching. So remember we talked about the response time in the previous screen, the challenges, right? So most of the times when the member logs in, they want to look at their member details and member account details, last 10 transactions, and what happened with other details and all that, right? So all that information. So what we do as part of this 360 Connect is we gather, when the member logs in, we gather all the information pertinent to the member and loads into the cache for the immediate retrieval. So any subsequent request from the member in that session, it will go into the cache and fetches that and replies to the user interface. This is much faster because you're not going to all the way to the backend application to gather the information. It is fetched from the cache. Two advantages from here. One, it is more fast and the user experience is enhanced. Two, there are not many costs to the backend systems, and there may be a taxing on that backend calls, and you're reducing the taxation, right? That's more important in the digital world. And those are the two important things. And of course, you can be asking a question like, okay, frequently accessed data. What about if I'm getting last 10 transactions, what about if that is changed? And of course, 90% of the times, this data is not changed. But of course, the 10% of the times, it's going to change. I agree with that. So what we do is a 360 Connect has got a feature called a webhook and a listener. So what happens is when the member logs in and we load all the data into the cache, any of the objects that is changed, that is loaded into the cache, we have the webhooks and the corresponding listener on the back end. When something changed on this object that's loaded in the cache, the listener is notified and immediately the webhook will be invoked, and it immediately removes that object from the memory. And then what happens is when the user request for that object, say for example that transaction, and it goes into the memory and checks. It's not there in the memory, right? So it goes back to the backend system and gets the information. Now it loads into the memory again and then sends it back to the user interface. So this is like as if it is doing the first time, right? So 10% of the times it goes back to the backend application to get the data. Remaining 90% of the time, it is fetched from the cache, which is more efficient, and then it is enhancing the user experience. That's a very important aspect of it. So with these all features, this product is going to be enhancing the development, and it's reducing a lot of development activity, and then reduces the cost, and you can deliver the products immediately into the market, and you can be very immediately in going at the products into the market. That's really important. And then we talked about all this, and then we talked about the bridge between the canonical data model. Probably I'll go back and maybe I'll show you that. And the canonical data models to the backend applications. What we talked about is like the integration layer, the canonical data model, APIs, and then the user journeys on top, and integrating with the digital channels. But we didn't talk about the integration between the canonical data models to how do we communicate with the backend applications, right? You remember we talked about two accelerators. One is the technical accelerator, which we talked about so far. The second one is the FinTech partnerships. So we are partnering with the backend application providers. Say, for example, we are already talking to Creatio, and we are partnered with them. And we are talking to Pfizer to partner with them. And majority of the banks use these backend applications, either Creatio, Salesforce, or Pfizer, Jack Henry, right? So 80% of the banks use that. So based on that, we're making partnerships with them. And what's the idea with that is we'll be working with their architects and API providers, and we understand and we work them together, and we build the gap here. We build the accelerators, and how do we communicate with their APIs to the canonicals here, canonical data models. Now that gap will be bridged with the handler processes. Once that gap is bridged, it's all done. Like you have the APIs, you have the user journeys, and you have the communication to canonical data model and canonical data model to your backend applications. It's all built. The only thing that's left is integrating with your digital channels. So with this, it will be 80% of the work is done already with this accelerator, and you can enroll the products pretty quickly, and that's more important to any of the digital transformation, right? This is important, and then this is the way to go in future with the digital transformation, with the accelerators. Get to market faster, quicker, and with high performance. With this, I will stop here, and then I will transfer it to Naresh, because Naresh has been working with several credit unions, and he has seen the integrations, how they are working, how they're having performance issues, how they are working with the back-end core applications, how they're integrating with the front-end digital channels. And he can see the value of this product, and probably he can explain what's the importance of this product and how can it help in digital transformation. Naresh?
Thank you, Venkat. That was a wonderful deep dive and insightful look into the architecture which the accelerator is going to bring to us. And I also wanted to call out that this is something which we have. This accelerator is something which has organically evolved based upon the number of financial organizations we have been working with, and helping to solve the problems. Like we have always looked at kind of learning from that and building this accelerator, which will reduce a number of the points which Venkat mentioned. One of the biggest strengths of the accelerator is how it combines smart design with tangible benefits. For instance, the pre-built APIs don't just expose standard banking core functionality out of the box, they directly accelerate the rollout of internal tools and customer self-service channels, which is the digital, which is the mobile banking, your online banking, and all the AVI and AVR, which will be interacting with the accelerator. Similarly, Peggy talked about this pre-built, which canonical models. Now, there's a lot of work which goes into building those, But what it essentially does is it enables us to have a plug and play architecture that simplifies integration with legacy systems and multiple systems, whether it is your CRM systems, your Salesforce, or your things like your loan application systems, which are there in the bank. And that actually takes that's a big win on your development side. Like, you're reducing a lot of your cost, your time, which you're going to be spending on it, because you already have, as Venkat mentioned, about 80% of it done. And this is something which we would have loved to have, and we will now be able to provide to our customers, which will help future digital transformations to cut down a majority of the cost. And also the built-in caching methodologies we spoke about, which is a big thing, especially when we are talking about some of these legacy systems which are using heavy protocols such as SOAP, and whose response times are something which have been traditionally a challenge, which has faced development of any kind of interfaces to them. As an example, at a particular customer, we have had a member or a customer basically coming and putting in a loan application. And when those API calls are made, some of these backend loan application systems are SOAP heavy. So you have the responses, coming, and it's a composite response, because as a customer, I could have different types of loan applications, and it's going to go and the call is going to get orchestrated across multiple applications. And if we had the benefit of the caching system, which is what we are going to introduce, that will improve the user experience for our customers, the bank, right? And it also, a lot of this, a lot of the value the accelerator brings is basically allowing the bank employees or the financial institution employees to focus on providing value to the customers, and letting a lot of this plumbing being handled by the integration accelerators. And by actually eliminating a lot of this integration plumbing, now teams and banks are then allowed to focus more on what is going to be beneficial for the end customer. So there's a lot of value the accelerator is bringing, and this is what we are seeing across all the future digital transformations who would be able to leverage this. So at this point, I would like to hand it over to Darren, our sales director.
Naresh and Venkat, that was a great presentation. I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to view this presentation today. And if you guys are going through are looking to fast track your digital transformations or improve member experience for credit unions, please give me a call or shoot me an email. Would love to set up a complimentary consultation for you guys, and share some case studies with you, how we've helped other credit unions and small banks in the past, and maybe explore or discuss your technical roadmap moving forward. But again, thank you for your time today. My contact information is on this last slide. You can also give me a call at 832-875-2439. But again, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.